the big challenges. There are vision and point of views that may be illogical, but these visions actually depend on the deterrence, and they think it's the only deterrence that we have. I think we have seen in the Arab region that how it's come into a context of terrorism and violence, which will lead to a retort. And I have seen an real experience when I was in Iraq, when the overuse of the execution without fair trial and heavy and wide implementation for more causes, for more violence, and for tension and terrorism and sectarian problems, and creating more problems that unfortunately Iraq is still stuck in it. So unfortunately the Arab country are facing a challenge regarding the capital sentence. Also there are 100 reasons in Yemen and Syria and various countries, and there are a lot of reason in Libya for this law, even in a Qaddafi ruling, and still these laws are exist, but now the execution are wide because it's not restricted to a law. Also in Jordan we were happy of the suspension of the sentence for a long years, but it got a setback after the ISIS burned down the pilot. Also in Egypt, as we have seen in the studies of our dear colleague, there are around 100 legislation leading to the capital punishment, and I think it's overuse and it's excessive use of the sentence. We want to thank our Italian partners who have a primary role in promoting this role in the United Nations, and this lead to the demolish of the law, and a lot of foreign countries have experienced that, and also they limited the capital sentence and limited it in the intense crime. Also we have a lot of Arabian countries that the Egyptian deputy response was distinctive. Ambassador Magdi Abdel Fattah, when he said it's a matter that out of the Egyptian context, because we have Egyptian Sharia and we can't have laws go against the Sharia, so we try to deal with that. But the screwed and prude assessment say that there are 400 person have a capital sentence, and this more than former assistant for the prison agency. In a lot of media have mentioned that it's create and burden the shoulder of the prisons. Also in the implementation and execution, the rate reach a 15% a year, but surprisingly this guilty person, which more than 35% according to all of the resources that no one challenged. The capital sentence is long time. That means 2/3 of this number have a final capital sentence, but at least it was from 5 years to 15 years, and based on that there are deputy and a problem regarding the excessive use of the capital sentence, which give a negative image of the country, especially lately based on the tension. And we have seen that how agencies like Al-IFTA agency played an important role in many cases lately, and the great development happened in the Al-IFTA agencies, and also the presidency agency have dealt with that, because lately they decreased or relieved a sentence from one person from Suhail Hague who got sentence of capital sentence, and a presidential decision decreased the sentence from capital sentence to a life sentence. But we don't have a specific detailed announcement about that. So we are talking that we have a motivation for fears, and also we have an opportunities that we can take it, but our obligation and commitment is limitation of capital sentence to the least limits or minimum. This is probable, and it's a commitment in Egypt according to the international laws. So we have a better use if we want to revise our Egyptian legislation, and also if we want to widen the penalties to reduce the use of this capital sentence, and also to stop the execution of this sentence. All of that may provide a better reality that we are living on, and unfortunately that the world see us through it, and to solve the negative image of Egypt about this matter. We are very happy to have today Mr. Ahmad Al-Fiqi, the criminal law professor in El Sadat University, and he is the editor of the most important book, and he talked about the capital sentence in the Egyptian law, and he also participated greatly in his PhD, because his PhD was about torture in the Egyptian Sharia, and he played a great role in the teaching of Sharia and a new model. We are honored also to have Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Mamdouh, the Secretary General of the Egyptian IFTA agency, and also we are honored that he will have a very important participation, and I think he will discuss the IFTA agency role, and also I will discuss the relation between the law and Sharia. Also, we have a very important study from our dear friend Hamis, who have a PhD in a political science. He also a significant journalist, and he will discuss a scope and research about this capital sentence through media based on questionnaire and polls and things like that. We will hear first for Dr. Ahmed, who will propose his study, then we will move among the speakers. Thanks, the Secretary General. In the beginning, I want to express my deep happiness to be here and in this conference to discuss a very important topic, which is the capital sentence. Actually, today we are talking about the capital sentence, but there is a debate about this sentence, and it's not a new thing. But the debate about this started in the late of the 18th century. Before that, the capital sentence was granted and agreed on. Starting from the 18th century, the thoughtful and educated people criticized it heavily, and one of the problem with this sentence, it happened in a regime in the worst time of the criminal justice. Anyway, there are two paths, as you know, regarding the capital sentence: a path against the capital sentence and a path is supporting it. We can discuss all of the justifications for the pros and cons of the pros and against of it, but I will refer quickly for the most important arguments. The people who pro or against this sentence always say it's provide a general deterrence, which means terrorize the people inside the society. That means the perpetrator and implement and then we perpetrate or execute him, it will decrease the number of these crimes. So the capital sentence participate greatly in providing security and stability for the society. The second argument that it's a just sentence based on the revenge principle. It's also in the Islamic Sharia, but there is other point of view that is against that. And actually, one of the most dominant arguments that this depends on, that the capital sentence is we can't correct, it's wrong. That means if you executed a person and we implemented it, we executed him, then it was shown that he is innocent. We can't revive him or bring him back to life. But this the prison, someone spent 5 years in prison, then as she was accomplice in killing her husband, but then she was acquitted and she got the biggest recompensation from the Egyptian judiciary, which was £1 million, because she confessed that she killed her husband after torture, and the police officer who tortured her have a sentence on him. She was a promising actress in this time, but because of the harmful effect of the prison of this actress, so she couldn't resume her career back as an actress. So we couldn't see her on the screens again. But if she was executed and then got acquitted, we couldn't bring her to life again. Also, the capital sentence is inhuman and cruel, and it's against the human dignity. Granted that the international community stopped the argue about the capital sentence, the pros and the against of this the capital sentence now is all over the world, and most countries in the world are debating about that. It's a big hit. So because of the restricted position of countries, just stipulated that the capital sentence is banned on her constitution. It happened in France, and the amendment of the French constitution were mentioned also. The French legislative gave the constitution to fire the capital sentence. So the laws can't go against that or conflict with that. This is the international stance from the capital sentence. I also think that in the future, the countries that have is persistent to use this sentence, I think all over the world, the capital sentence will be either demolished totally or decreased. So the debate and the battle have started for a long time ago, and I think the demolish of the capital sentence gained ground heavily. Also, the role of this sentence in providing a general deterrence rose a lot of questions. Nevertheless, it didn't increase or stop the increase of the crimes. So the penalty, the capital sentence providing a general deterrence is under a question. I will move quickly to the position of the Egyptian legislature regarding the capital sentence. It have two parts. The first regarding the topic and the penal laws and penal provision containing the text of this penalty, then the procedural part regarding the procedures that actually after a wise study, I will start it in 2008, and the second it was in 2011, and the third I'm teaching it right now in the criminal law, criminal science diploma in El Sadat University School of Law, because actually this book got great reputation, more than my PhD, and I think a lot of people think this book is my PhD, and I'm very proud of that and take a pride in that. But anyway, actually it's not a bias or a personal point of view against the capital sentence, but we think the Egyptian legislature overused the capital sentence to an extent. You think the Egyptian legislature doesn't perceive the right of life fairly. A lot of the Egyptian penal laws have a capital sentence, despite, in my point of view, a lot of these crimes that the Egyptian legislature punished by capital sentence doesn't deserve this sentence. I think there is a lot of crimes, especially that regarding offending the or preventing the interior or abroad security of the state. We call it an abstract behavior crime or an inconspicuous. They are trying. It's need to reach so there is no harm had happened. So some scholars say it in unharmful work. The Egyptian legislator didn't. The Egyptian legislature punished them by execution, and that caused us to think about the policy, using it in policy, and how they use it as a tool and mean in the authority to restrict the other authorities or to become tyranny, or especially the majority of the crimes that the Egyptian legislature punished by capital sentence come under a violation of the state security, either interiorly or internationally. Regarding the trade dealing, if you prepare your house for drug use or consumption, you will be executed. Do you know the doctors or the pharmacists are authorized to possess the possession of drugs for cure, but if you use this drugs in other aim or other goal, they will be executed. There are a lot of crimes that the law punished by capital sentence despite its depend on the intention. So we can say the legislature criminalize the ideas and thinking. It's depend on the primary principles and on the criminal law. We know that the phase of thinking in the crime isn't a crime. A possession of weapon aiming to use it in disturbing the security and the social security and the national solidarity is a reason to make weapon possession punished by capital sentence. So if we want to try to determine the reason of that, all of that are flexible terms. Also, Article 77 of capital sentence say that he will be executed whoever harm the sovereignty and independence of this law. Also, when you determine this, when we discuss also the procedural stance, we always responded to the capital sentence or remaining the capital sentence. We said it's a guaranteed sentence, but actually these three guarantees for issuing the sentence, like the unanimous agreement and referring it to the Court of Appeal and the Mufti, I think it have only one guarantee. But when their guarantee contract, because if the judge, the higher judge, have more power than the two other judges. Regarding how to refer the case to the Mufti, we know it's a good will of the legislature, but maybe the Mufti have a point of view and the court have other point of view, because the Mufti role is advisory. Because each one have sentence, even if he doesn't have execution, he can challenge it before the Court of Appeal. So it's not a guarantee. This is the role of the Court of Appeal. I think this guarantees doesn't represent the minimum international guarantees that the United Nations Council for Social Justice. We should have a repeal for the courts or the decision of capital sentence. It tried not only to retry the new accused, but to try the sentence. So they don't start afresh. They don't listen to the witness. They said only the sentence go with the law or not. Maybe that takes us back to a famous important case in the 30s, which is the superintendent officer of al-Badari. He was very cruel and violent with the people, and in al-Badari center he was oppressing the people, torturing them, and he captured someone called Daidi, and his only problem that he walked before the police station. They arrested him. They cut his mustache. He make him wear the female's clothes, and he tied him, and he put a stick in his anus. And then when he was released, it was really degrading. So he decided to revenge the superintendent. So while the superintendent were walking, he shooted him down, and he was referred to criminal court of the premeditated killing. The criminal court sentenced him of capital sentence. He challenged this sentence. Abdulaziz Bashar Fahmi was the president of the Court of Appeal. He see that all the legal conditions are satisfied by the decision, but he said the Court of Appeal doesn't have an option unless to second this decision, but it appealed the responsible one to use his responsibility to decrease the punishment. So they seconded the capital sentence, but they appealed the official person to decrease it, and they stated also that the superintendent committed a untold acts, which is severe crimes. Imagine that if we have other president of Court of Appeal, this person should be executed, and he was released finally. So I think we really need to activate the constitutional text regarding creating a court of appeal for crimes. Starting from 2012 to 2017, we haven't heard that any talk about this matter. Also, there were about the Court of Appeal role in the amendments. So we need to rethink this topic. Do we really think that Court of Appeal is unfair, or it's an abnormal way based on the amendment of the rules of this court? The statehood get nervous or fight that. The state should be more calm and understanding when they release the legislations. We are not legislating for a specific period or as reaction for immediate crime. We are legislating for life. The other part that I want to talk, also in 2011, I made another study. I want to evaluate the Egyptian stance regarding the capital sentence. This study discussed the sentence of execution from the Court of Appeal from 1990 to 2001. It showed that in this period, the Court of Appeal have 65 sentence of capital sentence. The Court of Appeal seconded 34 of, and they appealed 31 sentence and verdict. 59 case or verdict regarding the violation of life, like murder. 2 of them or 3 was kidnapping a woman and raping her, and other one was regarding importing a drugs, and other one is drug dealing. So the 59 case represent related to violation of person. So the Egyptian position under the constitutional text of the severe capital sentence, it doesn't. So they just sentence when they violate the right of the life. Finally, we need to rethink and re-evaluate the topic context regarding the capital sentence. I'm not supporting the total demolition, but I'm supporting the limitation or restriction of this capital sentence and became minimum in specific crimes. I am supporting it 100% in the violation of life crimes like murder. We want to add also a guarantees, because the existing guarantees isn't enough, and it can't give us a clear conscience when we overuse this capital sentence.
It must have for the prosecution to provide the case to the court, even if the defendant does not use his right to appeal. But ultimately, there is no legal text whatsoever that abides the one who is sentenced to execution to have a lawyer. We need a lawyer for him to write the reasons or the legal reasons for his right to appeal. In so many cases, the defendant doesn't have lawyers, then the prosecution appeals for him. But the way of writing the reasons, of course, in the brief that is provided to the prosecution is called for the sentence to be upheld. But in my opinion, there must be a lawyer brought by the public prosecution to be briefed on the case and to decide on the appeal and to write a brief for that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and I fully appreciate the time was not enough, and you tried to summarize it, and you have expressed many important issues and its significance. But I think we have the second version of your book, and I would like to remind you that in 2009, the first edition, which were about the legal 100 legislative texts about the penalty in Egypt. At the time, there was a seminar attended by 9 or 10 constituencies presidents in different Egyptian courts. They have debriefed on the book and the code for the book to be distributed, in addition to professors of law and other sectors interested in law, and the reaction of them was absolutely shocking. They were shocked to know that there is this excessive legislation in the use of death penalty. Try to imagine that study of Dr. Ahmed in itself, as a preliminary study, was in itself stunning, even for those who apply law. This is ironical because they didn't know that they applied a law excessively, and they are not aware that this law is excessive in use. Now we listen to Dr. Ahmed Mamdouh, and I would like to give a note that apart from our meeting today, that the IFTA house in Egypt has been revolutionized in the last couple of years. As human rights activists, we are following the developments at the IFTA house in Egypt, especially in the last 2 years. This is a revolutionary. They have modernized, and this discourse has its impact not only at the local level but at the international level, and this needs to be appreciated. Now we listen to Dr. Ahmed Mamdouh from the Ifta House in Egypt. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, and praise be to Allah, and prayer be upon Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. All my dear respect to Professor Ahmed for his intervention and his fruitful study, in which he has made all the attendants to be fully concentrated on what he was talking, and all my thanks to the people, and especially the restroom people on the podium. In Islamic Sharia law, ulamas or Islamic thinkers have been talking about the five faculties, or first, mental, psychology, psychic, religion, finance, and to the body. To keep these five faculties that are the most important issues for the Sharia law, whether at the partial or the whole level of the Islamic Sharia law. Therefore, Islamic Sharia law is based on protecting the five faculties we have mentioned. And these faculties, which we called the main goals or the supreme goals of the Islamic Sharia law was not the only Sharia that called for it, but taking into consideration these five faculties have been part and parcel of all other Sharias, other religions, I mean. Ahead of this is preserving the psychology, preserving the self of the man. When we follow how the Islamic Sharia has dealt with this, keeping the self, quote unquote self, we find that the Sharia law has set specific procedures that ultimately pours into the issue of preserving the self. Based on our understanding of Sharia law, we have a base that improving and this disagreeing, for example, has the authority of the Sharia law. If somebody, for example, objects to a specific Sharia law judgment and considers it to be inhumane or degrading or something like this, if he does this, he is now trying the Sharia law, which is of course absolute as Muslims believe, and he also tries Sharia in the sense of improving and disagreeing with something that may resort to culture or tradition, but not the Sharia law, which is a constant law in Islam. Here, I would like to be based on this side that is from an Islamic Sharia point of view. One of the procedures to preserve the self in the Sharia law is the retaliation. That is qasas in Arabic, to revenge, the retaliation, but in the Islamic sense. In Islam, it was called as it is in the future. In spite of being apparently the end of somebody's death, that is the killing of the one who killed somebody before, and to take, yes, as in spite of the fact that it is apparently an end of somebody's life, yet it keeps many lives of the people in society. As the professor Ahmed has been talking about, the basic principles of law is that the punishment in a law is meant to be a public and a private deterrence for people. According to Islamic Sharia law, when we look at the retaliation or qasas, we have been looking for the so-called public deterrence. Arabs in the past used to say that murder negates murder. What is this? Murder negates murder. If I bring, for example, the killer or the murderer within a fair conditions of trial, and he is finally convicted or condemned, the punishment must be the end of his life. This end of life negates or rebuts the action which he did, and rebuts the action of killing other people, because this is a deterrent that would warn people not to repeat such actions in order not to have the same destiny. In spite of that, in Sharia law, when it was stipulated that murder or qasas or retaliation that must, we say, sometimes in Sharia we say it is a must, and sometimes it is a may. Sometimes it's an obligatory, sometimes it's an optional punishment. We have in Sharia law, we divide crimes into different crimes. We have some crimes that must be done crimes, and other crimes that have decisive acts. Such crimes, we have specific crimes in which specific or a compulsory, obligatory decisions by the Sharia law against such crimes. And other crimes may be dealt with optionally. In Islam, if a decision has not been made on specific punishment, to specify such punishment is left to the discretion of the judge. That was in the past, before establishing our newly institutions. That was based on the point of view of the old Islamic thinkers. This was left to the discretion of the judge, which was appointed by the emir or the prince. There was the Malikite, there was the Shafi'ite, one of the Islamic four schools of thinking. Of course, in the present system, it is now left to the discretion of the judiciary. If we want, for example, to translate their speeches or their words into an understood phrase that would live up to the purpose we are looking for our current, we say that this punishment is the type, discretionary punishment is the one that has not been specifically stated by the Sharia, and it's left to the discretion of the judge or to the president or the leader of a state. This is for achieving the private or public deterrence. This is of course different from one person to another. This is the type of called discretionary crimes. And sometimes we are talking about death penalty, sometimes it's optional, sometimes it's obligatory. For example, intended murder, for example, in the case of adultery, with one of your relatives, close relatives, or first degree relatives, sometimes we can talk about the right of the leader of the state to use this death penalty in crimes that is against community security. And this is not agreed upon amongst ulamas or Islamic thinkers. But for example, when we talk about the spy, about espionage, some people believe that the punishment of an espionage person or a spy must be murder. But in Islam, this is a discretionary punishment. Kidnapping, for example, or hijacking, for example, and this type of kidnapping, this type of punishment, sometimes we say the hijacking of females or kidnapping people, in that case, the punishment may be murder. This is left to the discretion, of course, of the judge. But for those, the spirit upon which they have inspired from the Islamic texts, they have fully reached the conclusion that death penalty is narrowed to the minimal. But other Islamic Sharia thinkers have believed that the interest of death penalty in itself, when affecting security, in the case of drug trafficking, in the case of espionage, this will be for the best interest of society. That is, we look for what is more important and what is less important, what is more casting and what is less casting. But yet, anyways, death capital is narrowed in Islamic Sharia law to the minimal. It's important to know also another role, that all punishments in Islam are not meant for themselves, but the goal of the punishments are not the application, but the goals is to make people fear. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in other punishment, in issues, crimes other than the murder, for example, in debauchery or adultery, one of the followers of the Prophet, he confessed committing adultery when he came to the Prophet, and the Prophet did not punish him, but the Prophet said, well, I will have an investigation. He kept asking him, you may have done so and so, you may have done so and so, because the Prophet, as a mentor of Islam, he would like to teach the man and to understand, to tell him what is adultery. The Prophet at the end told the man, maybe the Prophet asked him to stop the man, because the man may not be aware of what he's saying. After long interrogation by the Prophet to the man, the Prophet has left him without punishing. The man insisted on being punished, and it was inevitable for the Prophet to do something about this. Some of the followers of the Prophet, especially Ali, the cousin of the Prophet, one of the main followers, was interrogating people. For example, when asking somebody, have you robbed? Have you stolen something? And tell him, say no. Therefore, the goal in Islam is not a psychopathic act, is not to satisfy sick-minded people, but the goal is the deterrence rather than the application of the punishment. Therefore, whether Islamic ulamas narrow or widen this, but we say that the origin of punishment in Islam is narrowed to the minimum, based on the rule and based on another rule in Islamic law, which is that, as we say, somebody will not accuse somebody unless proved guilty. We say in Islam that the one who has discretion will not take the punishment, as we say, the doubt is in the favor of the accused or the defendant. That in Islam, to acquit an accused is better than to incriminate an innocent. This is very important rule in Islamic Sharia law. One of the other regulators is the eligibility, the criminal eligibility, and the proof of the crime, full proof or full evidence. Even when they talk about the application of death penalty, when it's proven, we say, Islamic thinkers say that this punishment must be not harsh on the criminal. I mean, God has said that everything must be charitable. That is not to harm the person even when he is executed. That is not to torture him, not to defame him, not to destroy his body. In the past, before the media have been introduced, the only means to punishment, the way of death penalty, was the sword. Some Islamic thinkers were talking about the sword, and in spite of the fact that the sword at that time, the sword is metaphorical. It's meant to be the less painful means for killing the criminals. If they have something minimal harm, we would use it. We use a minimal means. We want a speedy death and a minimal pain. Also, the means used for murder must not defame the body of the criminal, and in using such tool must not destroy the body. For example, like things like acids must not be used. Also, it must not be against the dignity. For example, there are some other people that were hardly, for example, in putting some instruments in person's body, piling somebody, for example. Also, the criminal punishment in Egyptian law, we call on keeping the death penalty, but to the minimum based on the Islamic Sharia standards, to be narrowed and doubt for the best of the accused. Also, the presence of such punishment in Egyptian law is of paramount importance. Why? It will be against some extremist ideas that are calling the Egyptian state as an anti-Islamic state or an anti-Sharia state. So, keeping such penalty, and this is, of course, mentioned in Sharia law, would denounce such claims of extremists. Also, we have the authority, we have Egyptian IFTA House. It's one of its legal missions is to consider the lawsuits brought by the criminal courts. This is compulsory after the judges have unanimously made their verdict, and after all legal or litigation challenges have been completed. This is before pronouncing the final verdict by. Of course, the opinion of IFTA House is not binding to the court, but this is another eye, and each eye has its point of view. And when following the files of execution punishments, there was never a conflict between the IFTA House and the Egyptian criminal courts, except in very few cases, very few cases. Ultimately, we highly appreciate and second all efforts exerted in this field, and each eye has its vision, and we welcome all views based on thoughts, methodologies, research papers, information, against all these impressionistic and emotional points of view. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Doctor. And now we have a major intervention by Dr. Karam Khamis, the rapporteur of the meeting, who will brief us on something that's very important. We have seen the legal point of view, we have seen the Islamic Sharia point of view, And we said that in Egyptian law or in Islamic Sharia law, it is narrowed to the minimum. We will see the public opinion point of view through his media investigation, through a questionnaire. Does it agree with the law and the Sharia law? And here is the floor, doctor. This is a big challenge, doctor, to talk at the end of a national workshop amongst those elites of Egyptian legal and Sharia professionals. I am very flattered to have Dr. Ahmed and Mr. Ahmed Mamdouh and our MP, Mr. Ala Shalabi, and all the researchers in the field of human studies. When they are here, we have human specialists and legal specialists. They will be accurately choosing their words, and they will have their clear and meticulous linguistic references. As we can say, this, what I'm going to say may be on the margin, and what I may say is just an explanation for all that has been stated in the last interventions. It may be very strange to begin this discussion with talk about some cinematic issues. In 1954, Egypt's cinema produced the so-called film Sara fil Wadi, or A Conflict in the Valley. It was acted by a number of great Egyptian actors like Farid Shawqi, for example. The film has two major themes. It was the first step towards the marriage of two famous Egyptian actors, Omar Sharif and Faten Hamam, of course, in the film. And they were representing two different classes. And the second point for the people who watch the film, they have seen many scenes of execution in films. For example, Yusra in one famous Egyptian actress, also Saad Yunis in one of the detective intelligent series about the Egyptian-Israeli before 1973. Also, Muhammad Ramadan, a famous actor who was punished also in 2014. He is just talking about a number of Egyptian actors who were executed in films. These were scenes. The main scenes of the heroes, that one of the hero or the heroine would escape from the prison and to avoid being punished, in spite of the fact that all pillars of crimes are not there. What is clear about all these media films, in all this, we are going to try to answer what the point of view of the Egyptian public about the public opinion about death penalty and their attitude or trends. The paper does not claim to be biased for a certain situation, nor it evaluates everything in the Egyptian public, but it tries to brief all the viewers on the public opinion view of death penalty. In fact, public opinion in Egypt, which may be supporting a specific issue, it sometimes seems to be unanimous. But to be accurate, public opinion is the agreement or the consensus of a large segment of a society upon a specific issue. Therefore, a public opinion may differ from some time to another. Therefore, it might be opponents and proponents. That is the way. Sometimes some people may share this different points of view, and it may differ from some time to another. Public opinion has different functions. It is a social regulator for the behavioral and moral issues. It also creates mental links between the citizens about a specific issue. It also paves the way for a negative or a positive change through mounting pressures on the government and executive authorities towards taking specific or decisions. As far as the map of public opinion in Egypt is concerned, the first feature is discussing death penalty in Egypt, and its application is in itself incomplete. For example, if we ask the public, the layman, what is your point of view about death penalty, we will find people maybe not interested. The second issue is death penalties. Discussion is seasonal, and in some cases, such issues are commensurated with the day of combating death penalty, or a great event, for example, that has taken place in Egyptian society that requires talking about death penalty. The third issue is it is circular. For example, when you talk about it, for example, what happened in 10 years ago, for example, what was said 10 years ago is the same that's being said again today with different forms, with different discourse that commensurates with the age. Yet the content is the same. That is when we talk about the characteristics of Egyptian public opinion. In 2009, when the United Nations have banned the death penalty, we had two trends in public opinion. Some people opposed this decision as it's against Islam and against the constitution, which says that the Sharia law is the main source of legislation, and some other people supported the UN resolution at that time. In the last couple of years, the same issue was raised, and for the first time, it was very clear that we had the two same streams and trends in public opinion. The proponents and the opponents. Those who look closely to the issue, you will say that we also have other different views. Maybe they do not appear, and if they appear, they will have less or lower voices amongst this hack or high voices. We have a medium or a moderate stream trend that shows that we narrow death penalty to the minimum. This is a third stream and provides sufficient guarantees in trial for those who will be sentenced to death. But I think due to the political and historical context of Egypt, we have the two trends. Those who are calling to enlarge the death penalty. It includes media professionals, parliamentarians, and some highly intellectual figures. But this is a reaction to specific social situations, such as a rape of a disabled female, a rape of a child, or a horrific accident, for example, in organ transplantation, organ trafficking, and organ sale. This sometimes brings to the surface media professionals who call for the application of this. Some media professionals, during the problem of the dollar against the Egyptian pound, some media professionals call to apply the death penalty against those who are exploiting the Egyptian people's needs for specific commodities or goods. That is the fourth. Now we have the fifth trend. The fifth trend also must be highlighted. This fifth and final trend, we might call them those politicized group. The politicized group are those who apply or suspend a punishment based on their political view rather than a methodological or a philosophical point of view. The politicized are those who call to enlarge the punishment, who claim to be for the protection of the social coherence of the state, to protect the sovereignty of the state, the rule of law. But those in the same trend who call to suspend the punishment, those politicized are just doubting the guarantees provided by the Egyptian prosecution and the integrity of this, and they may believe that there is a state of instability because of a political view. Some of them call for a 5 or 10 year suspension of the death penalty. What did Egyptian media do to find these completely different 5 trends? We have studied closely 3 major newspapers. Al-Ahram, representing the government, and Al-Wafd, representing one of the main liberal opposition parties, and Al-Masri Al-Yawm is an independent newspaper. We have studied closely the three newspapers, and we have taken a sample last December. A study was made for the same issue in 2009. It was in December, so it was taken 7 years after 2009. And it was very clear that there was no significant development. The same trends were remarked, and it was based on the same views that were done in 2009. In 2016, in December, people believed that death penalty must be applied to those terrorists, and it on those outside Egypt, for example, who have similar points of view that is facing terrorism, like Jordan, for example. In some cases, the press has recalled death penalty in other countries. For example, the study has recalled, Al-Masri al-Yawm has recalled the death of Sayyid Qutb, one of the major Muslim brother thinkers. Also, Nicolae Ceausescu, the former Romanian president, and consider this to be one of the major scenes in humanity. They recalled it to the Egyptian mind, the Masri al-Yawm newspaper. We have also noted that the way of the media treatment is news or reporting. We didn't have like a large reportage or long investigations about this. It was just a report, news, and they were just following what happened. It was a narrative. One of the major problems of a narration is we just stick to the only report. For example, we say, quote, the court has sentenced to death a butcher who killed a child, unquote. Then we don't talk about what happened later. We just transmit as a headline, and we don't take into consideration the point of view of the public opinion. The collective death penalties or verdicts have been followed by the press without taking into consideration that such verdicts were taken in absentia. That means that they are not to be executed, and the oversight that there are other litigation procedures like appeal or cassation. They just, as I say, they refer to the narrative. They do not provide legal background to allow the listener to understand and thus to form the public opinion about it. In other treatments, in the last newspapers, the three newspapers, we found the following. There are four main patterns dealing with execution. The first pattern is the puzzled. That is to deal, one media professional deal with death penalty from two opposing angles. We found that at El Wafdi newspaper with a reportage on the fairness of applying execution or death penalty in Egypt. At the same month, they were publishing articles for Dr. Mahmoud al-Saqqa, who is against this. Also, Dr. Ala Arabi, who had a different point of view. That is two different conflicting views. The same Wafdi newspaper has also held an interview with Ashmawi, or the man in charge of executing the death penalty. There were also many discussions that show sympathy for the executed people. Sometimes we say that a child was taken from his mother in order to have the mother executed. This, of course, has an emotional impact on the people with those who are executed. So it was a double role that was explained by the Wafdi newspaper. Is this a trend? Two opposing views. That was clear for us in our study, that the same paper opposes and proposes death penalty. Another is sometimes Al-Masri al-Yawm excessively talks about death penalty without saying why it's interested or preoccupied with death penalty. Al-Masri al-Yawm, one of the papers we investigated, has once published an enumeration of all death penalties that were published from 1906 until now, say 110 years. This may be related to a political point of view. Is it to form public opinion? But no, this is not possible because it cannot form public opinion. It must tell us the reason. Now to the third paper investigated, Al Ahram newspaper, which says whether it's correct that such death penalty will fall by time. Why are they interested in this? Why is the media able to communicate its message here? We have two other patterns. The third pattern is the exciting one, the exciting pattern to deal with the application of execution or death penalty in a way that looks for what attracts the readers, as it provides something exclusive. For example, in the killing of one of the terrorists in Egypt, Adil Habbara, I have read 6 different media treatments. Each newspaper dealt with the last moments of the executed terrorist Adil Habbara. One described him. Some of them showed him as a villain. Some of them showed him as a flagrant person, as he was dealing with the executor in an immoral way, and to deal badly with the guardians. So it depended on the point of view of the newspapers. Some others showed how Adil Habbara the terrorist called for a breakfast or for ablution and prayer before being executed. But in one of the reports, the reliable reports, the man didn't do all that. But what was done, that it was something like a maulid, it was something like a party, that everyone is telling his point of view to try to attract the reader and to catch the reader's attentions. The last one is the promotion. Sometimes the media either promotes for death penalty by publishing specific case that really deserve to be executed and present them without completing its mission, that is without investigation, without reviewing legal texts, just for promoting death penalty as expedient, important, deterrent, and of an important beneficiary to society. Some others, after lengthy hours of watching media, we find the Court of Cassation says that this death penalty is null and void. Therefore, he is acquitted. So why is all this promotion before listening to the final verdict? Who functions this? Who employs this? For example, first instance courts in a way to defame the country. This is the other side of the picture. I was exchanging with Mr. Mahmoud Qandil some news about death penalty. He sent me a news about the execution of 6 criminals in Minya. And he went to see who will employ this for a political means. I found that Al-Arab Al-Jadid, which is pro-Ikhwan Muslimin or Muslim Brotherhood, they have taken it from their point of view. The headline was as follows: the execution of 6 people being in prison, which terrorizes those who are politically detained. So, 2 different points of view by 2 politicized media professionals, those who are supporting and those who are opposing the death penalty. In fact, if the public opinion in Egypt does not have enough information about the death penalty, they are not fully aware of applying this death penalty, and it is still based on people's opinion. Therefore, the National Council for Human Rights has a big role to play to publish the awareness, to provide legal evidence, to provide legal assistance and legal authority to the public opinion to crystallize a clear vision about this point of view concerning this penalty. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Karam, because I'd like to say sorry we have been late. Sorry for this. And we will take very few interventions. But I hope that every intervention will not exceed 2 minutes, which starts from the right. Mr. Sharif Hilali from civil rights organization. All profuse thanks to the organizers, especially the National Council for Human Rights in Egypt and the Arab Human Rights Council. I would like also to thank the last speaker for reminding me of the report of 2009 about death penalty, which aimed at observing it and monitoring the decision. Also, the media professionals. I'm also to discuss some media articles. He also provided like a 60-something page study about this. I have two main suggestions. The first is about what Dr. Ahmed said about who is the most dangerous people vulnerable to death penalty, because the number of crimes that Dr. Ahmed have indicated, many of them are outside his definition. An Egyptian legislator, when dealing with international organizations, try to escape this and say, of course, we have a protocol to abolish the punishment, and there are UN conventions, but we have not banned it. And the Egyptian legislature say, okay, we are supporting the international covenants for social and economic rights, but we need a definition that will be based on international standards to abide the legislator and to make him comply with these international standards. The second proposal is related to the guarantees. I am supporting Dr. Ahmed's point of view, and we may add that this punishment must not be taken by exceptional or extraordinary courts. The last point, as Dr. Karam has said, that the media are trying to promote the idea that death penalty is a magical solution to all crimes that horrify society. And we say, of course, it must be in a public square to make people horrified. In spite of all this promotion by the media, no crimes have been stopped. And thank you very much. Mr. Shaban, with all due thanks to the podium and to the speakers, in the light of the Egyptian community and the second article governing the Egyptian constitution, that is the Islamic Sharia law, is the main source of legislation, I have here to discuss this with Dr. Ahmed Mamdouh, Sheikh Ahmed Mamdouh, the verse which says in the Holy Quran to the meaning that for that we have imposed on the Banu Israel or the sons of Jacob that whoever killed somebody as if he were killing all the people, and who helped somebody to life, that was as if he were helping all other people. I think that this article has enumerated or has restricted when to kill somebody, or the self killing, when it's based on corruption. In my opinion, when there is a definition for this, a specific definition, I can enumerate those who deserve capital or death punishment. Therefore, my proposal is that if the point of view of the IFTA House to have an advisory role, I am calling on a recommendation to have the IFTA House opinion in death penalty must be binding to the court. This is my point of view. That is, it must be binding to the court if it's taken by. Is it in both ways, the commutation or the tightening of the punishment? In both ways? I mean, is it important? No. I mean the IFTA House. Now the Sheikh is asking, is it for the commutation of the punishment or for the tightening of the punishment? Mr. Mahmoud, thank you very much. And thank you for the podium. But I would like here to differ or disagree with Dr. Ahmed in his respectful study. But in your speech, you said that some death penalties are for some political goals of the ruling authorities. when I deal with the articles, we talk about premeditated murder or the terrorist article 86 bis, paragraph A, B, C, and D, or the crimes on the assault of the state inside or outside the state. I said the killing a wounded person. I saw bullying. I see raping and kidnapping a female. This is, in my opinion, not for the service of the political party or authority, ruling authority. But now, when we talk about death penalty, I think we are at a critical point. We need to deal, to link all the current legislations with the constitution, with the current situation, and with the international conventions to which Egypt is a signatory, but in a way that would suit the privacy or the particularities of the Egyptian society. I'm not talking about utopia. I'm not talking about something very ideal. I'm not asking whether the crimes have been over. No. Whether the raping or incest crimes have been over. No. But when we talk about public and private deterrence, yes, it's a fight between good and evil. And this is made by God in the world to show us what is good and what is evil and what is bad. But what Mr. Karam has been talking, Mr. Karam has pointed out to many important views, especially about the role of the media. Sometimes the media play the role of the negative murderer. Sometimes they provide the positive murderer. This is shown in the series. In for example, Muhammad Ramadan's point of view, but this is to the cinema, not the media, and they're providing a negative or a positive point of view. When we talk about the media role, what will the media provide? Sometimes they make us sympathize with the people. Sometimes they make us hate the one who is committing the crime. We see that there are some trials in talk show, even they make their own judgments before the judges rule in specific cases. This is sometimes very important. Sometimes I say we have to make sure that all guarantees must be met, whether the prosecution, whether with the judge, whether with the whole state. Therefore, we need to treat the root causes that led the criminal to be a criminal. We have to deal with the causality theory. And then when we talk about the punishment, this is the final stage. We have too many disappointments in our societies. We have too many alternatives. We have many reflections on the society from 2011 until now. We need to reinvestigate and to redevelop our society. We need to create awareness and not to take it from just one point. Thank you. Mr. Ahmed Abu Daif, the application of laws, the death penalty, did it stop vendetta? The microphone, please. Could you ask him to use the microphone? As for the application of death penalty in Sohaj, one of the upper Egyptian governorates, we have it every couple of years. If you write Hamdi Abdel Aziz, you always find the death penalty every 2 days. Death penalty every 2 days. Sometimes the police try to just close specific cases, so in order to just be relieved of so many cases they have. Reconciliations sometimes work. The last reconciliation between two families in Sohaj, and all those who attended this reconciliation knew that somebody was a murderer. But because he belonged to a noble family, it was agreed that there must be a reconciliation. In spite of the man, because of somebody's weakness, he accepted the reconciliation. Yet, death penalty has never stopped the vendetta. Maybe another problem with the cases, sometimes there is a dispute for a piece of land or a patch of land. Sometimes this litigation processes takes 2 or 3 years. But I say death penalty is something very difficult, and God help our dear Councillor Dr. Hamdi Abdel Aziz. Now we have 3 fruitful interventions. I have three interventions. Please, quickly, Dr. Ahmed El-Fiqi and his valuable book. There are two focal points. Dr. Ahmed has said that the guarantee of the resorting to somebody as an agent to challenge a specific verdict or to make an appeal, I think the proxy, it must be taken from the point of view that the lawyer sometimes is inefficient and is not highly qualified and professional. So if we do not have a good lawyer, sometimes we do not achieve the main goal. The second point to Dr. Ahmed has been talking about the most dangerous crimes. We talk about the criteria of the most dangerous crimes, maybe terrorism nowadays. How about afterwards, after the wave of terrorism? How can we define them? I think this is a timely, that is based on the time we are talking about. So we had to redefine the term of most dangerous crimes. What is important is to talk about determining what is the most dangerous crimes. This is very important to define by time, I mean. Now, I'm commenting on what Dr. Ahmed Mandouh has been talking about in the topic of Islamic Sharia law. I would like to raise an issue. We have the role of Islamic Sharia is what is good for the interests of the people. This is what is good according to Islamic Sharia and according to God. So, keeping the self, preserving the self, protecting the self. For example, in Canada, after 416 years, it was discovered that somebody was executed, and through DNA, he was acquitted 416 years after being executed. Based on our Islamic Sharia law, can we apply the rule of narrowing or restriction of the application of the death penalty? I don't know, I don't understand, but I have been fully understood the point of the Islamic rule that where the interests of the Muslims are, lie the interests of God. And the doctor has provided a fruitful discussion, but I was also drawn by the politicizing of his death penalty. Therefore, we have to understand transparently and clearly that there is a political functioning or employing of death penalty to serve the interests of the people, maybe the interest of the state, maybe the interest of the ruling people. Therefore, how about death penalty for a political rival or a political competitor? This is, of course, completely wrong. We have so many examples in modern and old times, but unfortunately we, and I mean we as Egyptian society, accept the enforcement of death penalty against a political rival. This is very dangerous in my point of view. The second point is that media just report the news, or I think there is a point of view from the media is to direct public opinion. There are many examples of this, and I think the high bulk of media material provided to the people, sometimes whichever sometimes it means to orient the people or to direct the society to accept death penalty away from the political analysis of the story. Sometimes it's an exciting point of view. He's just commenting on what the last professor was talking, is that he's orienting the media, orienting people to accept the death penalty. We have it's now 5:30. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Ala, and I am deeply sorry due to some health problems I was unable to attend the first session, And this is the second session to talk at the Arab Human Rights Council. The first was held at the Press Syndicate during the times of the founders, Mr. Fathi Radwan, and that was 30 years ago. And we had a paper about what happened in Qom al-Ahmar, one of the Egyptian villages. And in order to cut it short, and I think the sub-issue that is the third session, I fully agree and second the point of view of Dr. Ahmed to the fact that that we should not fully abolish death penalty. And as His Excellency Sheikh Ahmed Mamdouh has said, we shall not leave the protection of the self, that is the retaliation or the revenge or the qasas meant by Islam. We may also have other alternatives, that is the daya or the ransom to be paid to the family of those who are killed. And this will achieve equilibrium in a way or another. This difficulty sometimes happens if it was a premeditated murder, but if it was a false murder or a murder without malice, this may be easier. So I am not for abolishing it. The second point is concerning the legislation in Egypt. I have a 40 years experience. I have a 40-year experience, and even the fatwa has become a political good based on the political temperament or the political will for the ruler of the state. I'm sorry to say that sometimes decisions, religious decisions, are tailored to satisfy the ruler and to direct public opinions towards a specific position. And we see the conflict between the Minister of Awqaf, Egyptian endowments, religious endowments, and the Sheikh of Al-Azhar, one of the major institutions in Egypt. We are apart from this. We would like to tell Mr. Mahmoud that I second your point of view, which is of high respect, and what Dr. Ahmed also said, that in all issues, the achieving of fair justice, complete, preserved, and sovereign rights of the accused to defend himself in the presence of his lawyers based on all international and national laws. Of course, the prosecution accuses him, but they must not be divulging specific news that are were absent from the mind of the judge in order not to justify his acquittal, for example. Therefore, the role of civil rights, syndicates of lawyers, or whichever legal form qualifies specific people who will be on the list and who will be ready to support those who are under execution or those who don't have lawyers, such as the former President Morsi, for example. And for example, when one of the lawyers came to do his right, for example, sometimes what is important is the accused must be fully and faithfully empowered with a lawyer. The second point of what Dr. Karam has been talking about, Habbara, Adel Habbara. Habbara was an audacious, rude person. He challenged the judge and he told him, if I went out of here, I'm going to kill you. So try to imagine a rude and audacious criminal. I think I don't want more philosophy, but I want to have an application with examples or to be an eyewitness. This is my point of view. Habbara is also coming from my governorate, and he admitted and confessed his guilt. As for Habbara, the terrorist, he is to be condemned. We must take into consideration that the members of the constituency, the Court of Cassation, must not be changed unless the member asks to be changed or apologizes for not continuing. In my point of view, through 40-year experience, I know that some judges may reconcile on choosing specific judges to reconcile with or to have a unanimous point of view, for example. But in some cases, if I get away some member, This will be very difficult, but it sometimes happened in Habbara, for example, the terrorist. One of the judges left the court and stepped down, and that was one of the reasons to accept the cassation, because one of the judges did not sign the verdict, because Mr. Muhammad Shireen Fahmi, as a policeman and as a judge, is, sorry to say, arrogant. He's a policeman rather than a judge. And I'm sorry to say that this affects the judge, the judges with, I'm sorry to say, unqualified policemen. Could you just please cut it short in a minute? Choosing the constituencies is very important. We have to choose them meticulously, and not to make him step down or to exclude him or disqualify him unless for an illness. For example, if a judge asks for being excluded, as what happened with the judge Ahmed Abul Futuh in one court.
صناعة التشريع
هيطردونا فندق والله.
معلش يا
They are kicking us out. Please, my friend, give me 1 minute. Please give him. When the Sheikh said about preservation of the right for the human being, they were some prisoner in Mauritania were tortured by regarding the violation of the legislator or the policies of it. Yes, it happened. Dr. Fathi Surur, the father of the criminal law and was the spokesman of the parliament, and Sidq Siam, who was the president of High Council of Judiciary. I attended them while they were preparing for a law against terrorism. You are just say this, the mentality can't be persecuted or sued, but I think a lot of people were persecuted in the 50s for that. These people, forgive me for that. But we are run out of time. Please. Okay, okay. We will. Dr. Fath, I will complete Fath Hasrur and Sid Siam. In their draft law, they were dividing the criminal act to a terror act, and also they included the thought even. So the division problem is the legislature, okay, and they are trailing the laws. They don't have standards. They don't have rules. I'm sorry we wasted. It is supposed to be in the first session, but we understand his.
There are other people waiting for us in another meeting, and we will have just a minute. يعني ممكن يعني مش لازم كل حاجة هذه يعني حلقة في جولة في حوارات ممتدة. فلو هيفتح حوارات ختامية في خلال دقيقة نبدأ مع دكتور الشيخ.
I want to thank all the smart participation regarding corruption on the land. There are a minimum limit that we are agreed on, and there are other parts that disagreed on, like hijacking is and kidnapped that are disagreed. Regarding the law are endorsing the corruption in land like a reason for the sentence. We still have to describe what are the corruption in land, and it will be the decision that the authority like a legislator chose to do that. From the Sheikh's laws and opinion, either the Al-Ifta agency opinion is obligatory or it's just advisory. It's depend on the authority, so it's debatable. You have repeated a lot of words that the media didn't provide the deterrence, or they didn't provide any deterrence. I can't imagine how to provide any deterrence with any sentence. Do you mean to stop this crime ultimately, no, I don't think that, because human is sinner, and they commit the problems, and they are controlled by lust, so they do harms. But when you understand the deterrence, you should think if it reduced the crime, and I think it apply on all sentence, and also it doesn't need a personal point of view, but it need a impartial and studies and sociological studies and so on, regarding where there is a purpose, there is God legislation, but it's divided into three things: cancelled, aim, and a postponed cancel. So if the one of the example of the cancelled, the aim, someone come and say we want to say the woman is equal to with the man in the heritage, because the women are working right now and have different social situation. Let's not acknowledge the cutting of the rapper big and the burglar, because it go against protecting the organ protection. Maybe I have a small discretion describing the fatwa as a political good. Not everyone talk about fatwa have endorsed, qualified talk and point of view. Granted that there are people using fatwa to use it in a personal aims, and they are not good people, but the good agencies that have a right to IFTA, like the Egyptian IFTA agency, is out of that, and I don't think you mean that. One of the muftis say a legal religious opinion against the Sharia. I am sorry, I should say it's incorrect, and al role. Please let me comment on that. Okay, either they are alive or dead. I am against the overwhelming general condition. It should be depend on information, not an impression. Did you study the case, Mr. Starwood? Okay, we got your point. I want to tell you something. We don't want to get into debate. The Egyptian IFTA agency, if you please, you asked, let me. Are you asking or you are forcing your point of view? Tarnishing the religion agencies of division is the extremist group heritage that they try to force it in the people point of view. The Egyptian IFTA agency during Mubarak agency and regime, they released an written IFTA or religious opinion that the passing down the ruling is illegal according to Islamic Sharia. I am enough with that. Thanks, Sheikh. Thanks a lot. Dr. Ahmed, I have no comment. Thank you. Doctor, I have 2 points. I failed to convey what I was saying. Mr. Mahmoud said, I'm talking about politicizing the capital sentence. It's not me. The media are using it. I don't have final sentence, and I don't have philosophical point of view. And if I say that I should have Shamaski and the Lasultawi point of view, the paper is simple and pure. If I fail to convey my information regarding that, I'm talking Adar Habbara and his execution sentence, not in his trial moment. and I was discussing the media coverage of his execution. I didn't discuss Major General Shaheen or the judge. I was just discussing Habara case. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Thanks. Thanks a lot. God willing, we will be honored with you, and we will resume tomorrow 9:30 p.m. It will be less exhausting day. Thanks a lot.